Stark kids each got a direwolf pup because of destiny and because, they're probably all wargs, is what George R. R. Martin would tell you. I say it's because they're all rich kids who don't have to share a puppy, let alone a bedroom. I'm just kidding, it's the first answer, kind of. One of my favorite Stark and Direwolf theories revolves around the children and the Direwolves, and specifically the Direwolves' names kind of giving away what's going to happen to each of the children, or more so like what their ending is going to be. And the show, as terrible as that ending is, kind of supports this-ish, though I think there will be some distinct differences, so let's break this theory down. A little Direwolf refresher, we have the 6 Direwolves of the Stark children, we have Shaggy Dog down there, Ghost, Lady, Nymeria, Greywind up here, and then Summer. So as I've said, the theory is that the Direwolves' names give away the children's ending, which I think is a very interesting idea, especially considering that when people have talked to George R. R. Martin about his ending or where certain character storylines are going, things of that nature, something he has said a few times is to go back and reread the first book, because he says the answers to everything, all the big questions and where things are going, are hidden in there if you have the eye to look for it. So with that quote in mind, I kind of love this. I'm like, oh, okay, so yeah, you just gave everything away. That's kind of funny, and that feels very George coded. Now, I specifically said I don't think all of them are giving away the ending in necessarily the same way that the show did. Again, I just think the paths diverge so much that there will be some big differences. So let's go through each wolf and each kid and how I think the name relates to what their future is. Okay, let's get the big sad one out of the way. You have Robb and his direwolf Greywind. Now, this theory is true. I think that Greywind is a very clever name to kind of give us what's going to happen to Robb, because unfortunately, kind of in the end, Robb doesn't really matter. And that's tragic, don't get me wrong. I love Robb. Robb is a very sweet kid, and when he's in the show and he's played by an adult, the adult is hot. Richard Madden, beautiful. But ultimately, Robb doesn't end up kind of mattering, he starts the war, he ends up dying, and the world moves on. And so in a way, Greywind is symbolic of that. And so the name, I think, is clever because it's the two parts of it and how they kind of appear in the series. So Grey immediately makes me think of the Grey Waste, one of the places that is known for being dead, and the possible location of the arrival of the others, the White Walkers, I think over in Essos. So again, I think Grey in the series, I think death, and then wind. There's a very popular phrase in the series, words are wind, which, words mean nothing. Wind in and of itself is just it's just this thing that doesn't matter. And so Robb, dying, dies, and he is in the wind, and he just kind of blows away, and it's very sad. Next, we have Shaggy Dog and Rickon, which I think is a very interesting pairing, because I think there might be a couple meanings going on here. The first obvious one is Shaggy Dog is a shaggy dog. It's a disheveled dog, which, in my opinion, is kind of what Rickon is turning into. Remember, in the books, Rickon is a lot younger. I think he's 3 at the start of the series, so by the current day, he's 5, and this entire time, during this very important part of his development, he has this connection to Shaggy Dog, which is causing him to become a little feral, let's be for real. Because one of the dangers of warging is if you warg into your animal and stay in there too much, you start to, kind of pull some of their traits, and it kind of infects your personality a bit. And so because Rickon is so young, doesn't quite understand what's going on, there is this danger that he's doing it unknowingly and it's having an effect, i.e. kind of turning him a little wild. And then, of course, there's the kind of double meaning, which is that Shaggy Dog is a concept, is a nickname for a kind of superfluous or funny side story that might kind of become irrelevant. Now, I know some people want to point and be yeah, well, that kind of is Rickon. He kind of turned out to be irrelevant, especially how the show handled him, just having him go away and then bringing him back only to kill him very unceremoniously. I'm going to argue that I really don't think that that's what's going to happen to Rickon, because George specifically said kind of early on when they were developing the series that the showrunners D&D wanted to basically not have Rickon on the show. They're hey, there's a lot of kids, let's just make it easier. Rickon doesn't do much, so let's just get rid of him. And George pushed back very strongly on that and said, no, I have very big, important plans for Rickon, so please don't do that. And so they didn't, for the time, but I think eventually when it came to the point where they were, not worrying about like eliminating storylines and kind of condensing things, they just took him out anyway as like a plot convenience because they probably weren't going to do whatever George had planned anyway. My assumption though is that Rickon is going to become important eventually, but it's going to like seem like a convoluted like side mission for a while. Because like right now in the books, Davos has been sent on this like crazy mission to go find him, but it's like a secret mission because the Manderleys all made it look like he's dead, but they didn't. They just like hid him away, and now they're like, hey, yeah, no, we're still on like the Stark side, so we're gonna try to take out the Boltons. We need you to go find Rickon Stark. Which of course feeds into the idea of the Great Northern Conspiracy, where, the Northern Lords are playing Stannis and the Boltons against each other, hoping to like weaken them both until they can put like a real Stark back in charge. Except now he's feral, so Then of course you have poor sweet Lady, who at the end of the day is a lady. Right now, Sansa's storyline in the books is all sorts of convoluted because Littlefinger is planning to marry her off to the person who is going to become the next heir to the Vale after they, finish successfully poisoning Robb and Aaron. And so the plan is to, marry Sansa to this guy. He would then become Lord of the Vale, and then she would become the Lady of the Vale, but then also she would be the Lady of Winterfell, and then she's just like in charge of a very large portion of the country all of a sudden. Like kind of in charge, Littlefinger thinks he'll be like pulling all the strings. But while I don't know that we're literally going to get like a Queen in the North moment, I do think that it will end probably with Sansa as like the Lady of Winterfell, at least based on this theory. And I say I don't know about like the whole Queen in the North thing because I don't know. I feel like either all of the kingdoms need to break up or none of them need to break up. But like the idea that like 6 stay together and then just one breaks off, that seems odd to me. Like you're really telling me the other 6 kingdoms, like half of which used to be kings back in the day, wouldn't be looking and going like, excuse me, can I get that deal? So yeah, I'm thinking Lady of Winterfell. Then, of course, you have Arya and Nymeria. Nymeria is named after a very famous Rhoynar princess, Princess Nymeria, who would eventually marry into the Martells and kind of create that new line. But Arya, she loves a historical badass lady figure, and Princess Nymeria is that girl. She was the leader of her people, the Rhoynar, who were in conflict with the Valyrians, and so when the conflict got too bad, they had to flee, and they built 1,000 ships and began sailing all around the world, like trying to find a new home. So while I think that the way the show handled Arya suddenly going like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a sailor now, was kind of weird and sudden and goofy, like, most of that last season, I do think that there is like a funness in the idea of Arya just being like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this. I just want to like go explore and like be like a badass that way. So like, yeah, you go girl. Then of course we have Ghost, a controversial one because of the things I'm about to say. So yeah. Okay, so with Jon Snow, obviously like the show ending has him just, walking off into the distance, never to be seen again on the other side of the wall, because that's the happiest he's ever been, yip-de-doo. I think Ghost's name in relation to that plot does kind of work, because he like does, for lack of a better word, become a ghost, at least to like, the people of Westeros. So I could see that happening in the book, but again, my thought has always been that I think Jon is gonna die. I'm just a firm believer in that, like, the real conflict of the story is not the Iron Throne and all that nonsense. It's like, it's life and death. It's the others and it's the humanity. And I think Jon Snow has a big role to play in that, being so heavily involved in the other storyline, the ice of the series. So I assume, like he literally will become a ghost because he'll die. But maybe he doesn't. Maybe he does his whole, like, walk off into the distance with, like, the fist bump in the air. Actually, I lied. Here's the most controversial one. So yeah, Bran and his direwolf named Summer. Now, I know the Bran the Broken ending is very stupid in the show, and, like, many people do not like it. I will say, I've said this before, I made a whole video about it, I do think this is probably going to happen in the books, just because what we've heard about, like, the few facts that we know were confirmed by Martin in, like, what his ending is, this sounds like it's one of them, and I think that makes a lot of sense with Summer, because the whole point of this series is trying to get back to Summer, and Bran, I think, in the role as, like, a new king kind of represents that new beginning. Though again, I assume it will be done a lot better than in the frickin' show, okay? Like, don't just hound me in the comments over this. Also though, George has mentioned that the weird seasons in the show is an unnatural, like, magical thing in the world that wasn't always like that and will be solved with the end of the series. So in a way, like, summer coming back is like the world returning to normal and like normal season. So no, it's not because it's a binary star system, okay? Okay, goodbye y'all.